Hey y'all, Bill Quirk with the Defensive Training Group and Shoot GTR. Here today to do another video answering some of the questions that maybe you didn't even know that you didn't know. People are getting more and more into red dots, and they'll come into the shop and they'll say, hey, I want to get a red dot on my pistol. I want to get a good one. What makes a good dot a good dot? So that's what we're going to talk about today. First thing to understand, a red dot, and that's the generic term we use because as we're going to discuss, you can get them in green and gold now even. But red dot, kind of like Kleenex, is just a term that we use to refer to the entire family of these optical systems. But red dot is not a laser. A laser projects a dot out onto the target, not something that we really recommend for various reasons. A red dot is a self-contained unit, like this one right here. This is a Vortex Defender enclosed, and it has an LED that is reflecting off of an internal lens. And that reflection is your aiming point. Between your iron sights and your red dot, they're mostly the same. There are some subtle but important differences between the two, but they're just sighting systems. And we have classes. I do a red dot specific class where we talk about the tricks and the trades of how you use a red dot and how they are subtly different than your iron sights. But at the end of the day, grip and trigger press are going to be the most important. But what's nice about both of them is everything is right here. You're not projecting anything downrange. That's one of the problems with the laser is you're looking down there trying to find it. These are all right in front of you. And in that sense, iron sights, red dot, they're very, very similar. To go on through some of our terms here. So like I said, red dot is just a generic term that we use. You can also get green dots. They've been around for a little bit with different manufacturers. And the newest one is a gold dot. Holosun's doing a gold dot. And they're saying that their research has indicated that that's going to be the best color to pick up in various lighting conditions and whatnot. I'm going to tell you that red, green, gold, try them, come into the shop, look at them, because different people, you're going to see things differently through your eyes. I'll give you a good example. It's something you'll hear on the internet that if you have an astigmatism, green is going to be better. I'll say it could be better. And the reason for that is an astigmatism, that's a generic term, but an individual's astigmatism is very individual, and your astigmatism may be different than this person's astigmatism. So how you as an individual process that information is going to vary person to person. So I want you to come in and I want you to look through the various dots, and you'll get a good idea. Does it look good to me? Does it look like a dot or does it starburst? Some people with an astigmatism have reported that the green appears better, a more appropriately shaped dot and less of a starburst. Other people with their astigmatism will say, no, the red works better for me. Gold is so new, I really haven't gotten any feedback on how that's working. The bottom line is come in and look at these things to figure out for yourself what's going to work best for you. The other thing that'll factor in is different manufacturers, how they build their emitter and the surface upon which that emitter dot is reflecting, what it's made of, the angle, the notch factor, the way that they build that, the tint that's on there. Your eyes will interpret all that differently. So you really need to come in and figure out, just like we've discussed, when you get a gun, you want to find the best gun for you using some core principles that are universal, but the actual decision on how you apply those principles is based on the individual. Same thing is going to apply to the dot. So as far as dot color, come and check these things out. Look at the different manufacturers because your eyes may process that dot a little bit differently from different brand to different brand. Now, something else to talk about though is the difference between an open emitter and a closed emitter, because this is something else that you may hear. An open emitter has a single lens up front and the emitter is exposed. A closed emitter has a lens on front and rear, so the emitter, the pocket, is actually within this back lens and is protected from anything getting in there. All things being equal, a closed emitter is probably a better idea. Having said that, I've been running a red dot, as I said earlier, on my duty pistol before I retired from full-time law enforcement. I started in about 2007, 2008 till I stopped and till I retired from that agency in 2017. So 10 years doing real stuff. I was with the task force the entire time, out in the rain, fighting people, rolling around in the mud, a whole 9 yards with an open emitter, and I never had a problem. Having said that, because an open emitter is exposed, if you're going to have a problem, there's a greater likelihood that something could happen. I have friends that are cops in the Pacific Northwest, and because of their environmental issues out there with all the moisture and the perpetual rain, they say that a closed emitter is definitely an advantage for them because stuff just tends to get in there because of the environment in which they're working. If you're using an exposed carry pistol, you're a police officer or whatever you're doing, and you have a duty style holster, any kind of outside the waistband exposed holster, you can get holsters that have covers that will give the optic a little bit more protection. But a closed emitter is going to prevent the possibility of anything getting in there. Absent, of course, a catastrophic situation where you defeat the integrity of a lens, you break a lens, and that's obviously going to be a different issue completely. The downsides historically between a closed emitter and an open emitter is the closed emitters tended to cost a bit more and they tended to be a little bit bulkier. And as technology has improved, closed emitters are becoming much more common and the price point is dropping down, so it's much more comparable with the open emitters. And you're also seeing the footprint is reduced as well, and I'll show you some examples of that as we go. So this is an Aimpoint Acro P2, very common closed emitter red dot, very, very good one. One of the best ones that's out there. It's one of my favorites, but it's known as the mailbox because you can see it is rather bulky up on top of your slide. This is one of the newer, this is actually from a company called Osight, and this is a closed emitter that fits on an RMSC footprint. There are different footprints out there for most of your smaller guns, your SIG P365, your Glock 43X, Glock 48, the Shield X, the Smith & Wesson Shield, the General Shield series. They use what's called an RMSC, and that's a footprint from a specific company, Shield Optics, that kind of became the industry standard. And this is cut for that RMSC pattern. But this is an enclosed emitter, but it still is quite a bit smaller and reduced in its signature, its footprint, from the Aimpoint Acro. So the Acro's been around for a while. This is a much newer release, and you can see they are starting to generationally get a bit smaller, and the prices are going down as well. So at this point, really closed versus open, all things being equal, I'd go with a closed. If you've got an open that's working for you, I wouldn't run out and dump it and get an enclosed emitter necessarily. But if you're buying a new one, I'd probably look at the enclosed emitters because they do give you some advantages, and the disadvantages, if you use that word, the challenges are starting to be mitigated somewhat. So when people ask, what is a good dot? There are a lot of different dots out there, a lot of different companies. Some are marginal, and then some are very, very good. The ones that I'm currently using and recommending for real use, I say duty use, but for real use, you're betting your life on these things, are going to be Aimpoint and Trijicon. They're the gold standards and have been so for years and years and years. And then Holosun and Vortex. I use all four of those brands, have used them for extensive amounts of time, lots of rounds downrange through them, and I do trust them. I see them in class, in the hands of students, and I've learned that they do meet the criteria that I'm going to give you to classify them as good, reliable, good dots. A lot of other dots that are out there are still being proven, and they don't meet that criteria, those things that we look for. So what are those things that we're going to look for? The three big ones are, does it have the longevity, the durability to withstand this reciprocation on the slide? There's a lot of energy that is transferred into the optic when you're shooting the pistol. Much more than when you're shooting a long gun where there's no reciprocation here. So these pistol mounted optics need to be attached correctly, and that's a whole separate discussion. They need to be mounted correctly so you're not getting shifting and movement as that slide reciprocates. And they need to be designed and built, constructed in a way that's going to absorb that energy, and you're not going to have shift to zero, you're not going to beat the electronics to death. A good dot, if it's moving at all in that mount, will quickly die. As I said, the Aimpoint Acro P2 is one of the best that's out there, and I killed one of these in less than 1,000 rounds at a class one time. Discovered there was just the barest amount of shift in the plate. The plate was not to spec, it was not built correctly. And I killed the dot. The dot had a catastrophic loss of 0 in the middle of the class. Unfortunately, in the middle of the test that I was running, I was a student in this class. So any movement, any shifting, if the optic is just not built to withstand that energy, you're not going to have a good result. So that's the first one. Is it going to withstand hard use on the pistol? And by hard, I don't mean you're abusing it, but you're shooting a lot and it's getting all that reciprocating force. The second thing is, does it have a good battery? Good battery life specifically. The RMR, the Trijicon RMR, which is still the gold standard, and it's the standard by which everything else is measured. The one challenge that it had was it was a bottom mount battery, and you had to take the optic off to replace the battery. Now the battery would last between 5 and 7 years, so that wasn't a huge deal. And what I generally recommend people do is just set a date, your birthday, New Year's, whatever, anniversary, whatever you remember, put it in your phone, put it on your calendar, and change the batteries in your carry guns, the guns you depend on, even if you have a home defense rifle. Change those once a year on that date, and then you don't have to worry about it. Most of your good dots will have battery lives that are measured in years, 5 to 7 years, somewhere in that, with constant on, with them being constantly on. Some of the newer brands have an auto shut-off feature, a shake-awake type of thing, so after a certain amount of inactivity, they will shut down. Once you pick it up, once you draw it, any kind of motion, it comes right back on to where you left it, same intensity, all that kind of stuff. And that also helps with your battery life, but you change it once a year, it's not a big deal. Back to batteries. So the RMR, you had to dismount and then reattach it when you change the battery. Your newer ones have side-mounted or top-mounted batteries, which you don't have to take the optic off in order to change that. So having a top-mounted battery or a side-mounted battery that's accessible without you having to dismount the optic, that's going to be a good thing. And just having a good battery life. The original Acro P1 used, I think it was a 1225 battery, and the battery life was not very good. It was less than a year with moderate use. So you had to stay on top of that. With the Acro P2, it's now a 2032, which is a very common battery for optics and for other things. And this one lasts, the aforementioned 5 to 7 years, so much, much better. That was a big improvement there. That's the second thing, good battery life. And then the third thing is the intensity or the range of intensity for your dot. Specifically out in Florida with bright sunlight, there are a lot of dots that you just cannot increase the intensity, the brightness, to the point where you can use it in that bright sunlight. It's just not going to be bright enough. Now, I will say this is going to be an individual thing. If you're someone with normal color vision, I don't have normal color vision. Someone with normal color vision, you're going to perceive the dot maybe differently than I do. I need it to be a bit brighter for my eyes to pick it up. A person that doesn't have any kind of red-green issues may be able to see it at a dimmer setting without any issues. So it is an individual thing. But a lot of your more economy, lower end of the spectrum dots, you just can't get them bright enough to really see that dot effectively and at speed out in bright sunlight. The good ones the 4 brands that I gave you, I can crank all those up, especially the Trijicon and the Aimpoint, to the point that they're blooming, they're starbursting at their top setting, even in bright sunlight. So very, very bright, which is what I want. I want that good range of intensity adjustment to make sure that I can see it when I need it, regardless of what my lighting conditions might be. So those are your 3 big things: durability, battery life, and then the intensity and the crispness of the dot. Is it a good dot? Is it a nice crisp dot that I can utilize? The ones that I've got here, I've got from all of my normal brands, with the exception of Holosun. I just don't happen to have one here. They are definitely very innovative. They have more models, enclosed, open. They run the gamut, and they're very, very good. And they generally are more inexpensive, not cheap, because there's cheap and then there's inexpensive. Holosun and the Vortex are a little bit less expensive than your Aimpoint and your Trijicon. But they're still very, very good. And my primary carry guns right now are all running the Vortex, specifically the Vortex Defender SE enclosed, and I'll show you that in a second. But Aimpoint Acro, we talked about that one. This is a newer Trijicon. This is the RCR, which is a RMR footprint, and that's important because the RMR footprint, remember I said the Trijicon RMR was kind of the gold standard. A lot of guns out there that have the RMR footprint. So if you get a new optic that will fit that, you don't need to go and get a new slide or anything like that. The Trijicon RCR is their first enclosed emitter model, and it does fit in the RMR footprint, and I do like these a lot. A lot of the Holosuns are an RMR footprint. A lot of the O-sights are an RMR footprint, so that's good. This is another Aimpoint. I've talked about this gun in previous videos. This is a Glock 43X with an Aimpoint Koa, and this is a fairly recent release, about a year and a half, maybe a little longer old. It's a smaller version. That's not really correct because it's not a version of the Acro, but it's same brand. They're both Aimpoint. but it is smaller, as you can see, than the Aimpoint. And that's because of some internal construction elements there. But very, very good, particularly on these smaller guns, because it does stay more or less flush with the slide, and a nice big window. That's something else we'll talk about in a second. Then, as I've said, this is one of my primary carry guns, and this is the Vortex Defender ST enclosed. And I do like these a lot. I've got, between my three, 15, 20,000 rounds through them in a bunch of classes and whatnot, and they have been great. They have been absolutely fantastic. This is the O-sight that I mentioned earlier, and they're a little, this line is a little bit kind of the newcomer to the block. They've been really pushing them hard. They've got some neat features. The larger ones, the XE, I think the XS might be the other model, they're pretty new. But they are for the larger guns, and they're an RMR footprint. So again, that's kind of a nice thing, but they are still enclosed emitters. So these are interesting, and I'm watching these. That's why I've got this one, because I'm testing it just to see if it does hold up to me. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is, and I just mentioned it, is the size of your window, because that's something that people really focus on and are like, well, don't I need a big window? The RMR has one of the smallest windows out there, and there are reasons for this. It has a dish in the top portion of the top plate of the optic housing, and that on the one hand resulted in a smaller window, but on the plus side gave it incredible strength. And those things are just so durable. You can pound on them, drop them, and they're going to maintain integrity, maintain zero. They're fantastic. That's what I learned on. And when you're learning a red dot, one of the big challenges that everybody has is finding that dot on the presentation. As you present the weapon, consistently finding your dot. And I'm going to tell you that is more on you than it is anything to do with the optic. Finding the dot on presentation, and by extension, keeping the dot under recoil, those are things that you need to develop. And the consistency of your presentation, something that you get in class and get in proper practice, that's going to give that to you, irrespective of the size of your ocular window. Having said that, when you're first getting started, a larger ocular window will give you a little bit more latitude in finding that dot. One of the challenges of a red dot, unlike your iron sights, as I bring the gun up, I can see those iron sights in my periphery because they're exposed. I'm only going to see the red dot, green dot, gold dot, whatever it is, when I'm looking through that window in a pretty tight orientation. So as a result, people tend to come up and they don't see it and they start moving their wrists, and we have catastrophic failures. And those are things we can address in lessons or in classes and stuff like that. A larger window will give you more latitude, but at the end of the day, you need to do the work to find that consistently. And that's a big part of the class when we teach it, is how to do that. But different optics will give you larger windows. Of course, they're going to be more bulky. They're not going to give you as much concealability. It really doesn't matter. I don't think the dot is going to be a big impediment to your concealability, but people worry about those things. Smaller dot, less window, more concealable. Bigger dot, bigger window, easier to find, but less concealable. Those are just things, you got to look at what you want, what you're going to be doing with it. The competition folks like the bigger windows. This is an example of that. This is a Vortex Defender XL, and it is an open emitter, but it's a much larger window. You can see quite a bit larger than the standard ST Defender, or even the ST, the open version, because they make an open version as well. So this would be something that might be popular for a competition person, because they got a bigger window that they can utilize. That's largely going to be experienced based on you getting out there and getting proper practice. So I hope you found this interesting. I hope you found this informative, and maybe answered some of those questions that you didn't even know. But if you have any more questions, by all means, reach out to me directly. Leave us a question below. Contact people in the shop, and we'll do whatever we can to help you. Give us a like, give us a share, and as always, y'all stay safe.